All right, we're talking about favorite boss fights this week, and I gotta mention Minion from Twisted Metal 2. Twisted Metal 2, one of my favorite games of all time, and Minion boss fight was a huge bitch. I remember it was on that fiery level where that had all those skinny pathways between the platforms, and you're always getting chased off or blown into the lava. It was a huge mess, and Minion himself, you usually probably playing as Warthog, because that was pretty much the strongest character in the game. Pretty tanky, and you had that ridiculous special that fired out the missiles. It was like, bam, 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 and then they shot out. But Minion had the same move, except for he also shot a freeze blast. So you get frozen and then instantly hit by rockets. It was very diabolical, and yeah, it was a really intense boss fight. You felt good about yourself. You beat Paris a little while back, and that was a really tough level. And then you get to this one, and it just pales in comparison, the Paris level pales in comparison to this fight. It was just super intense, and yeah, Minion, really, really tough boss.
What makes a good video game an even better main boss? I think one that immediately stands out was in Mortal Kombat 9, the one that came out last year, was, or the year before that, anyways, was Shao Kahn in the story mode. Now don't give me like the tournament status, whatever. If you played through the story mode, it was like so much more difficult, and you had to do it as Raiden. Now the first time you fought him, you were Kung Lao, I think? Yeah, you were Kung Lao, and it's like, all right, it takes some time, you get your ass kicked, no problem. So the next time you get to Shao Kahn, you're like, okay, I'm Raiden, no, okay, whatever. I beat him once, I'll beat him again. But then you spend like the next 2 hours just getting your ass handed to you, one time after another. This guy was relentless, just kicking your ass. And like, you think, oh, I know all the combos with Raiden. Nope, good luck getting them off. He had like so many combo breakers. It was so difficult, but when I finally beat him, I felt so accomplished. I was like, yes! Take that, video game, I beat you. I got really excited about beating a boss. Well, whatever, what are you gonna do, huh?
All right, one more very memorable boss I had. And man, I remember where I was with all these boss fights. And this one was Dr. Salvador from Resident Evil 5. And I was in my apartment with my roommate, and we were playing co-op. And suddenly this chainsaw wielding zombie with a bag over its head chainsaws down the gate and starts coming after you. And we're like, what? Who gave these zombies chainsaws? And we start running away from him. And like, you could hear the chainsaw coming. It was like, rrr, but you'd be like hiding from him behind a corner. And you're like, where is he? And you would see like him behind your friend. And you'd be like, he's behind you. Oh God, he's behind you, run. And you'd have to get away. And if you didn't, he was a one-hit kill. I think it was the first boss I ever saw him in new instantly. I'm like, that's a one-hit kill boss. If he kills you, if he hits you, you're dead. And sure enough, if he chopped your head off, and the first time it happened to him, I'm like, he's right behind you, and he couldn't get away in time, and he got his head chainsawed off. And I'm like, oh my God, this is one of the best bosses ever. So Dr. Salvador from Resident Evil 5, you made the list. Congratulations. You were horrifying, and you were great fun in co-op. I liked it.
And then, yeah, you gotta talk about it, Psycho Mantis from Metal Gear Solid. And the reason you talk about this boss is because it was literally impossible until that dumb phone call came in that was like, plug your controller into controller port 2. Like, why the f wouldn't you have just told me that information to begin with? Clearly you had this information and you were just hiding it for no reason. You could have saved me the pain of dying repeatedly, like 15 different times before telling me this information. Are you serious? Really? 15 tests before you tell me it's as simple as plugging my... And why would that help? Okay, this is supposed to be like a serious game. All of a sudden, my controller port, really?
You know what, Swinky's right. Psycho Mantis, now that's a boss fight that will just like, in video game history, shall forever live in infamy. It was like so aggressively annoying because like anything you try to do, any gun you pull out, like you have like this military arsenal at your disposal, and everything you've got does nothing to him. He's always 2 steps ahead of you. And I think apparently there was also like a hint if you had the game manual, but I bought the game used, so I didn't have the game manual, so I was just stuck. And so the phone starts ringing, the in-game phone starts where apparently, hey, they're gonna tell you how to beat him. But I'm like, no, this is not the time for a phone call. I'm gonna beat goddamn Psycho Mantis. And then eventually I answer the phone call. I'm like, oh, well, me. They just told me port 2? Seriously, you gotta put the controller in port 2? Just still to my, today, blows my mind. It boggles me how frustrating that was, but good for them. Good for them. Bastards.
Another very memorable boss fight, and it's memorable because of its difficulty and the fact that I never beat it. And it's something that still haunts me to this day. The end boss of Zombies Ate My Neighbors, the giant spider, me and my brother got to it. we got to the final giant spider, which was very, very difficult back in the day because you have a certain number of lives and a certain number of continues, and if you don't do it, yeah, you got that level password, but you know what? That's pretty much useless because when you enter in the level password, you start with none of your weapons. You want to try taking on like 20 of those chainsaw dudes with just your squirt gun? No, you don't. So you got to do it in one playthrough. And we finally made it. We got to the very end. We had the red potions. We were turning into monsters. We were punching him. We were using our rocket launchers, but it was not enough. And tragically, we were unable to defeat him. And we went back to the level 2. We're like, we'll enter in the code. Maybe we could find enough weapons in the level. No, there's no way you could just enter in the code, start with no weapons, and beat that guy. I dare you, I defy you to do that. It was borderline impossible. And that's one boss that still haunts me to this day. I'll get you one day, giant spider thing.
Okay, then I gotta go with Dr. Robotnik from Sonic 2. So this one was ridiculously hard because, as we know, Sonic is just a really impossible game to get through without dying and losing completely. So I remember I was a little kid. Me and my brother had gotten to the Robotnik fight, and our brother was away. I forget what he was doing. He was out bowling or something. But we waited for him for like 2 or 3 hours because we were so excited to get to the final boss. And the strategy for beating that boss was pretty much use Tails to do the damage and then just make sure that Sonic has one ring, because it was so hard. You had to go through that section beforehand when he's in his little ball. Then the ball goes up and he's like a giant robot and he's stomping on you. So you pretty much had to just keep that one ring alive while Tails did all the damage and died repeatedly. And that boss was insanely difficult as well.
What also makes a great boss fight is good music. And what boss has the best music? Well, that'd be Sephiroth with One-Winged Angel. Now, I'm not talking about Final Fantasy VII boss fight. That's whatever. You just won Knights of the Round and bam, game over. I'm talking about Kingdom Hearts. Yeah, you know when you can do that whole Hercules Trials thing or whatever, you can make it up to Sephiroth. Now, here's what was kind of crappy about that is because you can actually get there pretty early on in the game. So it's like, yeah, I beat everyone. Oh, it's Sephiroth, I can take him out. And then as soon as you start the fight, like, he disappears and this little feather just kind of like drops in front of you. You're like, what the f, where'd he go? And then he pops up behind you like goddamn Nightcrawler, just slashes you. And if you're not strong enough, instant death. So you're like, okay, I am not strong enough for this fight yet. So you keep coming back every now and then in the game, like, can I do it now? Can I do it now? Nope, nope. And finally, if you have the right magic, the right abilities, and enough patience, you might eventually beat him. But it's so epic. You're bouncing around, he's floating all over the place. You got One-Winged Angel playing. That was a lot of fun. It was a good boss fight. Good boss fight.
Memorable boss fights. I guess the most memorable one for me was Emerald Weapon in Final Fantasy VII. God, this is why I love this game. After you beat Sephiroth, who, by the way, wasn't even that tough, there is still 2 bosses left in the world, 2 giant bosses, and you don't see games do that these days. Even open world games, there's not like 2 giant, ridiculous bosses still roaming the world like Emerald and Ruby weapons still messing stuff up. But anyway, I was just exploring the world in my submarine one day, and I didn't even really mean to fight him. I ran into it, and I thought I'd take a crack at taking down Emerald Weapon, this giant green undersea Kraken Leviathan monster. And I was nowhere near leveled up enough. If you watch videos online, you have to be all the way leveled up and stuff. My characters were nowhere near that. But I had Kate Sith with me. And Kate Sith has one limit break, that it's a slot machine. And if it comes up, I'm not sure what, it was 7s or skulls or something, but if you get 3 of something, you instantly destroy whoever you're facing. And it was super rare, and like to the point where I had never even seen it before. It had never come up in all my time playing through, and I was close to the end of the game, and it had never come up, but it comes up against freaking Emerald Weapon, and I'm like, what is that? What does that one do? And it's like, it was something that looked scary. I'm like, does that instantly kill me? And then Emerald Weapon just starts shaking, and he's like, "Whoa." And I'm like, did I just kill Emerald Weapon? Holy, and I had to like come get my brother and my parents, and no one cared, but I'm like, I killed Emerald Weapon! I did it! He's like invincible, and now he's dead. And then I got all the master materia for winning, and it was awesome. And I never did beat Ruby Weapon, but it was the most memorable boss fight I've ever had. And I still think back to that day, and that's why Final Fantasy VII is one of my favorite games. And that was back in the day when I was younger. That's probably why I was single back then.